atheist or a theist or skeptic?
I don't actually know. I think he's something of a theist, mythologically a theist, I think. Jordan's a little hard to pin down on that. And so I find that interesting. This is my take on it, what I wrote about in the book. I think he finds that there are truths in stories, myths. Now, when he uses the word myth, like Jung does, or Nietzsche, or whoever, mythology scholars, they don't mean it like us scientists think, well, it's not true. You know, it'd be like saying, well, Harry Potter isn't true, therefore it has no meaning. It's like, of course it's not true. What are you talking about? It's fiction. It's a story, you know, with a message, you know, a moral homily, or, you know, whatever. It's an adventure, all kinds of things in fiction. It'd be like saying, well, you know, the Shakespeare's plays were not true. No kidding. You know, they're dramas. Okay. So what Jordan is arguing a little stronger than that, though, is that, you know, these mythic stories carry meaning for people's lives. So is God really out? Is there really a God out there? Okay, no one knows for sure. But people believe there is a God. That is real effect on their lives. And it changes people. So to that extent, I would say I believe in the gods that exist in people's minds, because those gods are real. But separate question, are they really out there? You know, are there really gods out there? And the same thing with, say, take something like the resurrection, which I gather is important to you because you're a Christian, right? So now, you know, there's much debate about in theist circles. The resurrection really happened. You know, first of all, was there someone named Jesus that really existed? Probably think that it's true. And was he crucified? Probably. You know, the Romans crucified everybody, you know, petty criminals and so on. Crucifixions were fairly common. So we don't need extraordinary evidence for those claims. We just need kind of ordinary evidence. Now, was he resurrected after he was killed? Okay, that's a separate, harder question, because it's an extraordinary claim. That is to say, of the billion people that lived and died before the 7.5 billion of us alive today, one of them is back from the dead, or maybe one. So call it 100 billion to 1 miracle. That's the kind of extraordinariness there is to that claim. Is the evidence for it as extraordinary as you would expect to be able to then say, yes, I accept the arguments and the evidence, it must be true because of blah, 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 so on. Okay, so we can set aside the answer to that question to the side for a moment. I think what Jordan would argue would be it's irrelevant whether it really happened or not. It's what it represents, right? It's being born again, starting over, the resurrection of your life, that, you know, heaven exists in your mind. It's up to you to decide what to do and start your life over. It's sort of a redemption story, a myth about, you know, much like the Noachian flood story. You know, was there really a great flood, you know, and so forth? You're kind of missing the point of the story. So, of course, we publish articles by people that say, well, I think the flood really happened in this area because of this volcano or whatever. And therefore, it has a natural explanation. It's not a miracle. But again, we actually published an article about that maybe Jesus, here's the explanation for Jesus' apparent resurrection. He wasn't really dead. He was in a coma on the cross, and they gave him this drug that could put him in an induced coma, and they got him off the cross. And then when he was in the tomb, his disciples whisked him away and took him off to France, and he had a family with Mary Magdalene, and before you know it, you have a Dan Brown novel, right? Okay, so but on the other hand, I think when you do that, you're either way, like it really happened or it really didn't happen, you're missing the point of the story. And I think that's Jordan's point. And to that extent, I have to say I agree with him. I think that's right. You know, I think stories, myths are important because we're storytelling creatures, and we deliver moral messages and homilies to each other through initially through the oral tradition, now through the written tradition and printing, and now the internet and so on, that we do that through stories, right? So by way of analogy, us nonfiction writers, our books don't sell nearly as many copies as, say, Harry Potter, fiction stories, novels, and films, dramas. Millions more watch those than watch documentaries. Because you can only interest people so much when you're just kind of grinding through charts and graphs and talking heads and so on. People need drama, with characters delivering a message, right? And so again, like the analogy I use in Giving the Devil His Due in my chapter on Jordan is, like the brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky's great novel. If you asked, well, were there really brothers named Karamazov in Russia? It's irrelevant. Maybe there were, but that's not the point. The point is it's a novel about, the changing of Russian culture at that time and what that represents and how people engaged with that and how they found meaning in their lives and on and on. And that's Jordan's point, I think.